How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. You're such a wonderful person, even though I feel like I've known
Oh,
you for a long time. And
thank
so,
you. Thank you for inviting me.
yeah. So I want you to introduce yourself and tell people who you are, what you do, and just the amazing blessings and gifts that you have.
Oh my. Okay, so I'm typically very humble and don't like to talk about myself a ton, but here we go. Who am I? My name is Mandy Cheek. Um, if you are talking about background, I worked in physical therapy from first as a tech, like 1996, and then I applied to school and graduated in 2000 and worked in the physical therapy field until 20 about 17.
Okay.
And the way I came to do what I do now, which is Rolfing, I had a back injury after the birth of my daughter that left me with sciatica for 3 weeks where I couldn't walk. And in the search for a complete relief of that pain, which took close to 5 years, lots of different modalities. But what finally got me into Rolfing was a podcast about chronic pain. I found my Rolfer. She fixed my back, like to where I had no pain at all, which was incredible. And then several years later, when I would go for spot fixes now and then, she put into my head that I could be a Rolfer myself, and I have been since 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a little bit about Rolfing? I know
Yes.
experience and I try to tell people about it and I cannot put it into words. It's just, I know what I feel and I'm in my body in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very experiential and it's hard to explain. As we come towards the end of our training, we actually practice our little blurb about what Rolfing is so that when people ask, we can explain it to them without sounding completely ridiculous and taking 5 to 10 minutes. But basically, Rolfing is the work that was designed by Ida P. Rolf, who was a doctor of biochemistry in the 20s. And she did extensive research and travels and, worked with movement teachers, physiotherapists, yoga people, all sorts of healing modalities. Her PhD work was in fascia and connective tissue. And what one of the people that knew her personally told me is that she was someone who did what she was born to do. So he said, some of us are gifted to be able to do what we were born to do, and Ida Rolf was one of those people. So basically, she took all these different modalities and disciplines and culminated them into what is now Rolfing, which is a structural integration modality. So as you live your life, you develop compensatory patterns that are sometimes not helpful. You have injuries and then develop compensatory patterns around those, your body trying to keep you from having that pain. And when you get stuck in a way that you can't align yourself in gravity, everything is harder. Sitting is harder, standing up is harder, moving is harder. So what Ida Rolf's work seeks to do is to relieve the fascia primarily, to where the structure, the bones, can realign in gravity and make everything easier. One of the quotes that she's known for is aging is a sign of you losing your fight against gravity. So a lot of the Rolfers that you'll meet are people that stay very well and flexible and athletic and movable well into their seventh, sometimes more than that, decade. So it really impressed me. My mentor is one of those people, and she's not a typical seventh decade person. So, and I said to her a long time ago when we met, I said, what is it with you? Like, how do you do this? And she goes, I've had tons of Rolfing. And I'm like, hey, there's hope for us all. So, that's what kind of drew me to, do what she does. So, but that's how I got into Rolfing, and that's what Rolfing is. It was born out of the human potential movement, because I think one of the visions that Ida Rolf had was not just in your body, but even in your emotional and spiritual well-being, that it helps you, like, it helps even your brain work better. Because if you're in pain, I don't know if you've been in pain before and you just can't, and you don't even want to talk about it, right? Rolfers call that not having resource. It's like, I don't have resource for this, right? So once you are Rolfed, you have resource. Like, you don't have to spend time thinking about my shoulder hurts or my neck hurts or my back hurts. You are like optimized and freed up to be who you're supposed to be. And so that's kind of that human potential movement piece.
Right.
I think he was seeking to do something that would help people in the body, not only like to be the best person they could, not only physically, but spiritually and emotionally as well.
Man, every time I talk to you, I so love it because I come out educated in things that I wouldn't even like learn, of like sought out. And so I love our sessions that we have. Can you talk a little bit about the 10 session series, like what that looks like? And because when I try to talk, I'm like, yeah, the first 3 sessions are superficial, and then 4 through 7 is in the core. I try to, but, can you talk to them about like what does that look like in that modality in Rolfing? What's the kind of the protocol, or what's almost like the curriculum? Like, what's the series?
Sure. Well, so the 10 session series is where Dr. Rolf landed in a systematic way to work through the entire body, superficial to deep, head to toe. And there's a concept in Rolfing called the line, and which is like your balanced center point, front, back, left, right. There is this line that you're seeking to get on, like balanced on. And the way that looks, like you're doing great for somebody that's not a Rolfer to know that the first 3 sessions are superficial sessions. And what we're seeking to do is open the body and elongate tissue and balance them in a way that it can integrate those changes, right? So initially, in session 1, we work with anchor points in the body that allow you to start to elongate. And second session, we're like left to right widening. And then third session, we're depth widening. So for anybody that's a math nerd and worked with like the which, worked with the graph paper and the XYZ axis, the first, second, and third sessions of Rolfing are changing the body in the X, Y, and Z axis.
See, I told you she's amazing. Okay, go ahead.
So, one of my instructors said that, and I was like, oh, that's fantastic. But, that stuck with me. So it opens up the body in that way and allows superficial tension to release to where we can get in deeper and work with some of the deeper structures. So if you think of fascia, it's everywhere. It is a structural organ. It is around every muscle cell, around every bigger muscle unit until you get out to an entire muscle and then an entire muscle group. And then usually somewhere it will attach to bone. So like in the thigh, you've got quads, adductors, and hamstrings, which are not one muscle, but several together. So, because you have like vastus medialis obliquus, vastus lateralis, rectus femoris, and the quads, right? Each one of those individually have their own fascial wrapping, but then the whole quad does. And then adductor, hamstring, and quad has its own big wrapping as well that dives deep and attaches to the femur. Okay, so just in that one little segment of your body, tension in the fascia can rotate your thigh in or out. And that puts a rotational pattern into your hip. So, just that little thing, and you froze up for a minute. Okay, you're back. Just that little thing can change the entire structure, but fascia is everywhere from the soles of your feet to the top of your head, comes around and attaches at the ethmoid bone at the bridge of your nose. I mean, it's everywhere. And if it gets tight and locked down, it's not as hydrated, it's not mobile, you're more likely to hurt yourself or have an injury if you fall or slip or, so it's an organ that you want to keep, just like your muscles need to stay strong, your fascia needs to stay toned and hydrated. And the incredible thing about fascia is that your nervous system is what moves it. So your Rolfing practitioner, we are working to create the conditions in your body where your body can heal itself. Your body has been with you your entire life. It knows how you should be. And if we create the conditions for that to happen, it will. And that was a foundational premise of Dr. Rolf as well, is that if you create those conditions, the body wants to heal, the body will put things back. So structurally. And it's just a happy side effect from what I've found in my work so far, that people have awakenings, they have increased curiosity, they have decreased stress and like, fight or flight. They have decreased calm nervous system as they go through the Rolfing 10 series. So all of a sudden they have resource to think about things they didn't before, or they get curious about something that they had always meant to ask about but had just forgotten because other things were going on. So, I mean, you have that spiritual and emotional component with it as well. Not to mention the fact that we've talked about before that trauma can be held in the tissues. That's why the body keeps the score book is like primary reading.
Right.
So, because, some of those things can actually be released and what I call processed out of the body in the process of Rolfing.
Yeah. I like the thought of like resource, right? Being able to like now have the resource. And when I remember my first session with you, I was so relaxed that I was scared I was scared to be that relaxed. And I was like, is something going to happen to me? What's going on? And I came into you and I was like, hey, being a Black woman, I just want you to know, I was really relaxed. And I was like, I think every brown and Black person needs to come in this, because there becomes like now, because I think we just finished my 5th session, I think, last Thursday. Yeah. And I am in my body in a totally different way. And there's so much stuff that has come up that I'm like, oh, I can understand how this looks selfish, just putting things together. And I think what's really dope when you say resource, and I think about me sometimes working with Black women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have the time. I'm burnt out. I'm stressed. And I'm just thinking, even if they did one session, where would them being able to have the resource to be like, oh, I'm going to chill out. Like, even I was driving back from the airport last night. And even when I went to the airport on Friday, I was taking my time. I was like, if I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to make it. I wasn't late, but I was taking my time and not rushing. And I don't think I would have lived life like that before I started my sessions. And I think that it's really important. I know it might be something different for people and just like don't know, but I think the idea of like actually having resource is something big, because I think we all think that we don't have it, but your body really wants to give you that. But if it's been cut off, it's like a lifeline. If it's been cut off, but I've found so much within myself in our 5 sessions.
Oh yeah.
I'm like telling people.
One of the great things about Rolfing too is you have some time to talk, right? And for some people, they have been so busy and they don't have boundaries, and they're yes, can you do that? Yes, can you do that? Yes, can you do that? Yes. And so one of the things that they start to think about, I think this is just a theory on my behalf, but you have an hour at least to be on the table and think about you. And you have an hour to think, gee, I'd like to spend more time reading, or I'd like to change my exercise routine, or I'd like to, and you can start to do some personal growth, personal development. You just have new thoughts.
Yes.
Maybe I don't have to spend my whole life like I'm rolling down a hill, which is how I felt before I was Rolfing. Like, you can just say, hey, these things don't have to be this way.
Right.
And some of the conversations that I have with people, I'm trying to facilitate a new thought. Like, if I see that they're stuck in a loop, my back hurts, my back hurts, my back hurts. Every time I do this, my back hurts. There's something that we talk about in Rolfing too called the story. Like, everybody has a story, right? I was fine until this happened. And ever since then, I can't this.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe that's just something your brain is attached to.
Right.
But maybe if you really stop and think about it, and I don't say this directly to people because I'm not in a position to tell them they're wrong, but I just want them to think about it, because I had my own stories too before Rolfing. I had a classmate in class. She couldn't start a conversation without, well, this happened to me. And one of the things I watched my instructor do was disconnect her from that story because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you. And you were talking about changes like as a Black and brown woman. And not to negate anything that anybody's ever gone through, but everybody has a hang up about something. Right. They write scary stories in their head about what other people are thinking, or, and you get on edge. What if I'm not supposed to be here? What is that person looking at me for? Why are they, whatever. And as you get more ease in your nervous system and your tissue, that can change. So, we talked about this in one of your sessions, like what I was hung up on before. And there was a day in my training when I walked into the grocery store and it just felt different. It was like, oh, nobody's looking at me funny. You know what I'm saying? It's like all my personal hang-ups were like at ease. And I was like, oh my God, all this time and energy I've spent wondering what other people were thinking about me. They're not thinking about me.
Yes.
Not at all. That's all in my head.
Yes.
So some of those things can change as well.
I just had that moment this morning. One of my stories in my head, and I was like, it's not about me. Like it's, I think it's like a dig or somebody's doing this. And I'm like, Marsha, really? And it's not saying that I'm not important, but my story was almost like somebody was pointing the finger. And I was like, you are important, but you're not the center of everybody's like world every moment, right? And once I let that go, the world slowed down in a different way. I felt like I could be creative. I felt like I was open to navigate the world the way I wanted to, and like be creative or speak up and all that stuff. And I had that epiphany today, and I've had those epiphanies, I have to say, probably once or twice a week.
That's awesome.
And it's been pretty dope. And just kind of like, let me get out my own way, right? Let me release this because it's not serving me,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there, like, I had an appointment today, not a Rolfing appointment. Today is my day off, but I had made an appointment with someone to see a space, and we made an appointment for 4, and I rearranged my schedule, and they didn't show up. Now, I don't know why. Like, I tried to call them, but me, before Rolfing and several years ago, before personal growth and boundaries and all these good things, I would be like, there's something wrong with me. Why didn't they show up? But that's not what it was. It has nothing to do with me. I've never met this person. Right. They've never seen me. I know they don't have any preconceived notions about me. It's not me.
Right.
It's their issue. I'm cool with that. You know what I'm saying? And maybe the reason that person didn't show up is because I didn't need to have anything to do with that space. Maybe, instead of getting freaked out because I'm late in traffic, I should be thankful because if I'd left 5 minutes earlier, maybe I would have been in a wreck.
Exactly.
Who knows? It's cool. I'm good. So, just losing that kind of stress changes your structure.
Yes.
So it's like, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but when your nervous system is calm, you don't ride around with your shoulders, I'm late, So, they go together. The structure relaxes, the attitude relaxes, the stress level comes down. You realize it's all okay. Yeah. It's all okay,
Yes.
So I came in, I said, my guy wasn't there. He didn't show up. And my daughter, love my daughter, she goes, what happened? Is he dead? And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's the only thing that will keep me from showing up. So maybe I hope not. But, I just thought that was funny. That's the first thing she said. I'm like, well, I'm thinking I'm not impressed with him because he didn't show up and he didn't answer his phone when I called him. So, and I'm sure he's not met his end, but that's the only thing that would keep me from showing up. So he needs to be Rolfed. Clearly he's not consciously aware enough to respect other people's time.
Yeah.
So interesting aside, you can.
Yeah. So how do you continue to grow and expand your skills? Like, I know we talk, right? And I love, it's just, you expand, you're always wanting to expand, but because I'm on the table and we're having those conversations. And so just kind of sharing with other people, how do you grow and expand your skills and.
So I talk with my mentor, my colleagues, and people about a toolkit. I'm always trying to expand my toolkit within the scope of practice of Rolfing. I came to Rolfing with my physical therapy training, with a little bit of craniosacral training, with a little bit of muscle energy, with a little bit of strain counter strain, just things that I can incorporate hands on, because pretty much everything was just elbows and and fingertips. But just continuing education. We have Rolfer gatherings every now and then where people compare notes. I have started doing some writing for our structural integration journal, which keeps me in touch with some of the other Rolfers. And I mean, I have classmates and instructors that sometimes I'll email them and go, holy cow, have you ever seen this? Like a new thing. So I think it's just gaining experience, because for the Star Wars fans, I told one of my instructors, I said, all right, all you senior Rolfers are like Jedi, but you're Yoda. Because that guy was like on a different level. He was very intuitive. He was the type of person that you sit next to him and you're like, I feel better. Like good energy, calming energy. And, so that the way that I have personal growth, I think I love to read too. Reading, podcasts all the time, anything to do with anything that might be helpful to me or my clients, and then continuing education and just staying in touch with colleagues, mentors, things like that.
Can you
for Rolfing? Because Rolfing is a set thing. And one of the things that's important to me is that we stay true to Dr. Rolf's work and not change it in a way that waters it down or makes it less effective.
Okay. So there's something, I don't know if
so one of my
Oh, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I was going to say one of my colleagues talked to a Rolfer and he says, well, I don't really do the 10 series anymore. Then are you Rolfing? Like, really, I don't, if you're doing something good for people and they get something from it and they pay you for it, that's good. But if you're not doing the 10 series, I don't know how you're Rolfing. So that's what I mean about staying true to the work.
Okay. So there's something.
I don't ever presume to be better than Dr. Rolf.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-mm.
But something, I know during our sessions, there's some part of you that use some of your intuition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. And so I can talk to you about that. I think I've talked with you about being from here, which is the southeastern United States. I'm from North Carolina. And for some reason, Rolfing is not as prevalent here. Like, we're trying to get more Rolfers here and get more people to know what it is and be Rolfed and experience the work. But I say I'm from here to say that, especially a couple generations back, this is not an area where there was like a lot of yoga or, personal growth stuff. We're like walk it off people. Like, and I'm probably not everybody, but the people I was exposed to, right? Go in there, do it, do what you got to do. You hurt yourself, too bad, keep going. It's not a think about it, not a lot of time for thinking and things like that. So remind me what your original question was, because I was going somewhere good with this.
Your intuition that you
Intuition.
Yep.
Yes. So I say where I'm from because that's considered here. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I've told my dad stuff and he's like, just that's it. That's it. We don't want to talk about that. But we talked about, I had a teaching assistant in one of the phases of training that actually had us come in and talked about how you could intuitively feel things and plug into things. And I don't know how it works. I'm sure there's somebody that has a theory about how it does work. And I've spoken with my mentor about this, but she says, you have your hands on people and you're in their energy and they're in your energy. And I have literally been touching something before and had an image pop into my head and said, were you in a boating accident? And they're like, oh my gosh, my dad's such a jerk. He jerked the boat this way, threw me back, I bounced off the back, broke my tailbone and went into the water. Okay. Awesome. But I mean, I don't know how that happened. I just know that if I get a car or a tree root or a flight of stairs or whatever, I say something because it typically will lead to a good story. And sometimes they go, no, I don't know. And I'm like, okay. I just ask. And sometimes you say it and 3 sessions later, they're like, oh, you know how you talked about that? This is what happened. And it'll come back to them, but they've literally forgotten. I had a client once who had fallen down a flight of stairs and hit her head and been unconscious. And I had been asking her all these questions around her neck because she had a bad whiplash injury. Like, that's what it felt like. I said, you know, you've hit your head, you've been in a car accident, you've fallen downstairs, you've done something. It took 8 sessions for her to remember that. It was 25 years previously. But I'm like, you sure? Nothing? You know, I just kept probing and asking and probing and asking, and finally it hit her like a bolt of lightning. You know what? 25 years ago, knocked myself out. And I'm like, that's it. That's what it is. And I mean, that's not uncommon. I learned that from my mentor, because she will feel there's a quality of tissue when there's an old injury that's different than a new injury. So you get into it and you're like, did you do something a long time ago here? Like, did you fall down on a playground? Did you break this? Because you just feel that something is different there. And a lot of times it'll take a little time for it to come back, which is okay. But like you and I have talked about, sometimes when you interact with something and the client has that memory and that response, it helps the body process it out.
Yes.
So if there's any sort of trauma in that tissue, it helps them process it out, which most people that I trained with in physical therapy would be like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's so outside the realm of like regular medical training.
Right.
And I don't know how. I just claim to see that it does something and it helps. And I think that everything that we can't explain yet is magic. Like, that's what people call it. Well, you know, in 10 years, they might figure it out. But until then, I'm perfectly happy with people being able to get the benefit from it and experience changes. You know, I don't care what you call it. It's like I told my mentor when I came in for her to first work on my back, I said, I'll stand on my head if you tell me to. If it helps, I'll do it. You know, I don't care what it is. I just want to be better, right? So, yeah.
That is amazing. So what advice would you give to someone who's new or who's seeking this wellness practice, this, you know, Rolfing? What advice would you give to them?
One of the things that drew me to Rolfing, one of the things, like, when I put more time into thinking about it, in my area, in my geographical area, a lot of people come in just because they hurt, right? Every now and then we get people that come just because they want to experience the work and see what it'll do for them. One of the quotes Ida Rolf is known for saying is, we do our work. If people get pain relief, that's their dumb luck, you know? So it's not like she created it for that, but it just is a happy side effect, right? Because the balance and the length of the ease in the body help relieve pain. But what I would say about the work is that anyone who has lived in their body for at least 2 or 3 decades could benefit from Rolfing. Like, there's something, you know? And I feel like if people get in earlier rather than after an injury, they can prevent a lot of injuries. And a lot of the people that come in and see me are people that are very athletic, high-level athletes, semi-pro athletes. They were college athletes and had injuries. So, I mean, it's really good for prevention of injuries as well. But if you have lived on this planet in the gravitational field and had injuries, you know, not lived in a bubble, you would benefit from Rolfing, just from a series of Rolfing, you know. So that's what I would say about Rolfing, is that I don't think you can ever go wrong at least trying a session of Rolfing. But you're going to find, I've had people, and this was my bias when I started, they come in and they're so fit and athletic and they look, you know, like GQ models or something. I'm like, oh, there's nothing wrong with them. Oh, yes, there is. Like, you get in there and you're like, oh, what is this? You know, and, oh, well, I turned my ankle out, whatever. You know, so despite how people look, there's usually something in their body that would be happier if it was Rolfed.
Yes. Is there any takeaways or anything that you want to share with the audience for them, you know, for them to take away themselves?
If they want to try Rolfing, the Rolf Institute, where you go for the education for this, there's only one program in the United States. It's in Boulder, Colorado. That institute has a website. It's Rolf, ROLF.org. And if you want to try Rolfing, you can go to rolf.org, and there's a little bar at the top for different drop-down menus. One of them is for visitors. You can go there, and there's a tool where you can put in your zip code and the radius you're willing to travel and see if there's a Rolfer close enough for you to try a session. I will tell you that there are different ways that people work, but we're all trained the same way. There's direct work and there's indirect work. Direct work is more like right into a problem. Indirect work is typically less pressure, more subtle, and it depends on who you're working with as to whether or not that can be beneficial. That's just my opinion. I've met some very skilled people that you're like, what do they do? You know, they do something, you're like, whoa, teach me that, because what the heck was that? But just, you know, you can call and ask some questions of people before you go see them, but that's the way you can find a Rolfer if you want to try Rolfing for yourself.
Okay. And where can we find you, my dear?
Oh my goodness. So I am in Greensboro, North Carolina, practicing at a business called Rolfing Associates of the Triad. The website is rolfingassociates.com.
Okay.
People can schedule appointments online. They can read about the 10 series there. All of our information is on the website.
Okay. I'll have it down. I'll have it. They'll be able to see it when it gets in.
Yeah.
I thank you. Is there anything else that you want to share around wellness and just your journey that you want to share with everybody?
Well, just that it is a journey. We all have our own things going on. You know, I think I've shared with you that I have kind of an extensive wellness history. I can definitely empathize with the whole feeling like everything's great, what's going to happen type thing, because I've experienced that before myself. But yeah, it's a journey. You're never there. Yeah. Like the good part is the journey.
Right.
So yeah, and every day is something to be thankful for, and you just keep on going.
Yes.
Every day is an opportunity.
Yes, it is. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you for coming on. And, you know, I'm going to want you to come on more. And, you know, sometimes I really wish I could take people on my journey of my session. Oh. I don't want them to see me in my, you know, my bathing suit and my bra. But right. I think that I just feel so much better in my body in this different way. Yes. I really thank you for being a part of my wellness team. It's been an amazing journey with you thus far.
Well, it has been a blessing to me that you've crossed my path.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well,
thank you. It's my honor that you let me work with you.
Oh, yeah.